Welcome to the Film Museum's A. Watson Armour Seminar Series, Black in STEM, featuring Chicago Public Schools educators. I'm your host, Ylanda Wilhite. Enjoy. Thank you, Mr. Sean Murphy, for joining us. Hi, my name is Ylanda Wilhite. I work at the Field Museum, Color Science Action Center, and we are celebrating our Black History Month 2021 version as part of the Armor series. And I want to say thank you for joining here today and just kind of giving some of your feedback and viewpoints on science, your career, your aspirations. How exactly do you relate science or any other topic to your students? And that's it. Is there anything that you'd like to say before we get started?
No, just appreciate being here and having the chance to speak on this topic. I think it's really important. So just glad to be here participating, and thank you for having me.
All right. Okay. So let's start off. What exactly is it that you teach? What do you teach?
Yeah, so I teach 6th to 8th grade science at Fiske Elementary, which is in West Woodlawn, 60-person cottage. Yep.
Okay. And if you mind me asking, what is also the demographics of your school?
Yeah, so kind of reflects a lot of neighborhood schools and the segregation in Chicago. So it's majority Black, 98% Black, with some small percentage of Latino and white students as well.
Okay. So with that demographics that's at your school, what is it that you do in your science classes to make some of the topics more culturally relevant?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a really important topic, that idea of cultural relevancy. So I definitely try to bring that to my teaching as much as possible. I think specifically as a white educator, there's a lot of approaches, but then just as an educator in general. So just kind of generally, I think it's really important for students to see themselves as scientists.
Yeah.
And that just because you're not wearing a lab coat or you're over at the U Chicago lab close by the school doesn't mean that you're not doing science. And so that's a big piece of it for sure.
Yeah.
And so in the classroom, what that looks like, hands-on labs, obviously, citizen science projects, there's so many, even here locally in Chicago that we can kind of tap into and be looking at things that students experience in their day-to-day life as scientists. And then just discussion and debate as well is something that I like to get into and kind of, again, allow students to see themselves as scientists and then make those connections to their day-to-day lives.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you would like to elaborate more, you say that the majority of your population demographics in your school is different from your own. In the sense of Black and Latino majority. What is something that you being a white American teacher have brought to the science that you think is beneficial or useful? And what have you learned too?
For sure. I think, specifically as a white teacher, it's super important to be coming into science, especially even with a social justice perspective and with an anti-racist perspective, especially as you see the ways that racism shows up within science. That's the reason we're having this discussion, right? There's underrepresentation in the field of STEM. And so, I think first and foremost, that needs to be named. I don't think we should be shielding students from the realities, both within STEM as an institution, and then also just, historically in the ways that it shows up in our present time. When COVID-19 hit here, we saw that it hit Black and Latino communities the hardest, right? And there's reasons for that. And I think those are things that students can access, and can have discussions around, because again, they see it. That's culturally relevant. They're literally dealing with the effects of that. And so, as a white teacher, it can sometimes be difficult, and you want to find that balance between, obviously, you're not trying to dwell on a topic or make that the only focus, but I think it's one that needs to be highlighted so that students develop that critical consciousness around seeing those things and then understanding that those things are not fixed. Those things can be changed, and they could potentially play a role in that.
Right. So with that, it sounds like you're bringing a lot into it. What is it, something that your students have taught you throughout your years of teaching?
Yeah, a ton. I'm a new teacher. I just want to say that too. This is only my 3rd year. So I feel like most of my teaching has been virtual even at this point. And so I'm constantly learning. I'm learning from my students all the time. When I was asked to do this, I gave my 8th graders a survey, hey, what, these are the questions they're asking me. What do you guys, how should I answer, you know?
Thank you.
Yeah, and so I try to get my students' opinion as much as possible directly, you know, with survey questions like that. I also try to, just in conversation, get feedback on how things are going. So as a new teacher, student input is huge to me, both on content and what we're learning, and then also process, like how we're learning it. And so getting feedback from students on what works, what doesn't is huge. I also just think like students' innate curiosity is an inspiration to me all the time. It constantly keeps me learning, you know, because you come in with your plan of, okay, here's our little objective that we're trying to get to, and students go a million ways with it, you know, because they're approaching it from their own perspectives. And so I think having the flexibility to adapt to that, and then also the curiosity alongside them to say, oh yeah, that is, you know, let's tweak this lab to then study that specific question that you had, or let's, you know, delve into this topic a little further than maybe what the unit that the curriculum has supplied asked us to study, you know. So I think, that curiosity is a huge inspiration for me from students. And then also, you know, I've just learned to be a better listener and know that they're the experts of their own learning, for sure.
I think that's super important that you say that. I think one of the things we don't always pay attention to is that students are scientists in their own right. They see things from completely different perceptions and viewpoints than we do all the time. And a lot of it's just their own personal experience that they're bringing into. And I think a lot of times we don't realize that science is, a lot of times it's somebody's observation and it's their personal experience that they're brought, you know, that they're bringing into what it is they're doing. And to get that feedback and to look at their feedback as just as important and just as scientific as, you know, is something that we're realizing that we can also do more on. And that's great that you're doing that.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, all credit due to the students, right? I mean, they again are the ones that know what works best for them personally, and then what they care about, you know. And I think, you know, that's one thing I've tried to improve, as you know, throughout my, again, short career here, is to just find those ways to make those connections, you know. Whatever it is we're talking about, how can we pull this into the daily life where it does matter to me,
right?
You know, why we're talking about whatever we're talking about.
Right. So just a little more info and feedback on you. So is this something that you always wanted to do, be a teacher and teach in this field, or what's your background?
Yeah, so I kind of came to teaching, well, I always had an interest in it, and then I kind of took a different route for a little bit and came back to it. And the graduate program that I came back to really focused on this idea of kind of a social justice lens. And so really appreciative for that experience.
Yeah.
And also, while we're on the topic, I meant to mention this up top, but two of my mentors in teaching through my graduate program are Black women. And so I just want to highlight that as we talk about this. Yeah. So like, as we're here talking about this, I think it's super important to name that. You know, that one of the directors of my graduate program, Jeanette Bartley, huge influence on me throughout that time, you know, in conversation with her and through her classes. And then also I was placed as a student teacher with a Black woman teacher, Vicki Drua at Ray Amatri, amazing science teacher that I learned a ton from. And so, you know, just want to mention that and name that as you know, as we're in this space. And then also, I think that was a huge influence on me coming into science, because I didn't have a huge science background either. You know, I had enough qualifications to technically get the certificate. I saw myself more as an English social studies teacher. Happened to get this placement and this job at the school that I had student taught at previously. And so, you know, decided to go with those relationships that I knew with the students.
Yeah,
exactly, over maybe the content. And so it's been a little bit of a struggle to me or for me, you know, as a science teacher that maybe doesn't have that background in science, but I definitely have the passion for it. And I think that's something I wanted to bring to this talk too, is just that idea of bringing whatever passion related to science that you do have into that classroom, and just, you know, allowing that to shine. Like I'm a birder, I'm a bird watcher. That's something I've come into in the last few years. Yeah. And you know, that's something I try to bring into the classroom. And like, we went over to Washington Park and went birding, you know, and got out there with the students and did some citizen science. And so whatever, you know, passion that you have related to science, like students will get into that too, you know, if you're bringing it and you're authentic with it. So
I think that's what's up. And I like that you're saying bringing in your passion. I think one of the things that sometimes we can get caught up on is all these different realms, quote unquote, of science, you know, so bio, chemistry, environmental, so all these different levels instead of also just kind of realizing that without that hands-on experience, that in-person, type of, experience it's hard sometimes to connect. Yep. So I'm just curious on when it comes to like teaching. You mentioned that you take your kids outside. You've done that in the past. What is their perceptions of like leaving the classroom and actually going out in nature and doing that type of science? Like, do you see something different? What is it?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, and I think again, it's that idea that it's not abstract. It's not like we got to go to Costa Rica to see birds.
That's true.
Like they're out back. We can see them from the window, and so just making it hyper local like that, I think is super important. That, and especially a place like Washington Park. I mean, that's a gem for birding in the city, and for it to be literally across the street from our school, it'd be a shame not to use it. And so. Yeah, I mean, I'm like remembering we've gone out to do it as a whole class once in my first year. Last year, we were going to do it during spring migration, and then COVID obviously delayed those plans. But, so that first year we went out as groups and did there's a Cornell Lab of Ornithology has the Celebrate Urban Birds initiative or program. I'm sure you're familiar. So yeah, we were participating in that, and so we went out 3 days and then did some prep and went out and then kind of reflected on our data. But while we were out there, a student kind of came up to me. We had binoculars and stuff. We're just kind of walking around. I was leading the group. And she walks up and she's like, I thought you were kind of crazy for this for a while, but I totally get it now. And so I was like, that's what we're doing. That's why we're out here. So, I think one of the questions you had asked is kind of like, what are the themes and topics that I try to emphasize? And I mean, environmentalism and just an appreciation for nature is a huge one. And the fact that nature is right outside, a park is nature, the beach is nature. And just kind of the fact that it doesn't have to be a coral reef in the middle of nowhere that none of us are ever going to go to, but it can be the park that we walk by every day, and appreciating that as nature and our connection to that.
Right. That's super. I think with a lot of people, we don't always see urban communities as this holder of nature and as this holder of science outside of the lab, just walking outdoors every single day. And I think it's going to become more and more common as you try to connect and we talk about different ways like climate change happening and whatnot, that, the urban environment is definitely full of nature. Everywhere you look, it's in the sidewalks, it's in the cracks, it's in the potholes, it's all of that. It's going up the side of the buildings, it's all of that. So I think that's keen that you're trying to emphasize on doing things that's right there, that's locally in the community. I think that's what's up.
Thank you. And I appreciate you saying climate change because that's another huge one. You know what I mean? And then we're seeing the effects here in the city first, right? Like with air pollution and the way that affects communities differently, and just the changes that you see within a park due to climate change, whether it's what birds are showing up or whatever the case may be. Again, that's going to be Black communities disproportionately affected. And so I think it's super critical that students, again, have that critical consciousness of why is this happening? What can we do to change it? And not only what can we do, but what can these big corporations and companies that are the ones, I think a lot of times, climate change is like, oh, we need to pick up litter, or, you need to turn your lights out by X hour. But like, that's not changing, the large scale issues that we're seeing. And so, climate change is definitely another topic and theme that I try to touch on with students, again, with that understanding that, it's going to impact certain communities differently, and there's reasons for that historically and presently.
Right. This has been a really great talk. I appreciate you bringing to life what it is that you do in the classroom. I now want to open up if you have any questions for me. I didn't go too much in depth on my background. And if there is anything that I can kind of help take back to your students when you see them again.
Yeah, I mean, I think, just this work that you all are doing with the Field Museum is amazing. I think it's a really important topic. Representation in STEM, and then also just appreciation and how can we get more students on this track. And so I just want to also highlight the Earth Force program that we've been doing through the Field Museum this year. Has been amazing. And just kind of speak on that a little bit. Like that's been just ties in everything we're talking about right now, right? Just environmentalism, getting students on board with that. and creating some sort of actionable step. I think is the piece that, that I've been missing in my teaching. And so I just really want to highlight that and appreciate the work that you all do to support that, because, you know, that's the end goal, is like, how can students make this connection to what is really happening, and then also feel like they really are, you know, contributing to some sort of change. So
the Earth Force program is it's a national program. It's open for a lot of people to get involved all over the nation. But it's wonders. I remember maybe about 5 years ago when I first heard about it, and it was like, man, this is nice. Like we got kids over here presenting their work and talking about the things that they've done in their communities and their schools right there at home, that they've actually like collected the data and proved that, oh, this can be changed, or actually we thought this was bad, but in reality this water or this air is clean. And you learn little specific things that you don't think much about, like water has a different taste. It doesn't all taste the same. It's just little things like that when you go back and do the research and have your own students, have the kids figure it out. So I just want to give props to who's helping you with that, is Colleen McVeigh and a number of other colleagues of mine, Iva Terry, and being in the classroom and kind of helping as much as we can to provide that information. But yeah, you guys are the real heroes. You make all the work that we do come to life. There is more students than we can ever have in the office place that's actually out there and like testing this data and learning and wanting to be the next generation, like a scientist, and you know, creating those goals and those steps, not just for them, but for their family and their own communities. So as we end out, Mr. Murphy, I just want to tell you thank you for coming on here and sharing your story. And if you have any more questions, by all means, you can reach out to any of us, and we'd love to talk more to your students and to figure out how we can provide more resources.
Yeah, I would love to have you in the classroom. I think that would be amazing. You know what I mean? Come in and speak on these topics. So we should definitely stay in touch and make that happen.
All right. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
My name is Onome Alabi.
That is awesome. So, Miss Alabi, what is it that you do and where do you teach?
I'm a high school science teacher at with Chicago Public School. I teach Carver Military Academy. Nice. I teach biology to freshmen and forensic science to seniors.
That is pretty cool. So you mind me asking, what's the demographics of your school? What does it look like?
Carver Military Academy is on far south side. It's located at the far south side of Chicago. Percentage Hispanic students, 46% Hispanic students, and 35.9% African American students. Carver Military Academy is a selective enrollment school, so we have students that the percentile in reading and math is above average. Okay. So you can call Carver a magnet school.
All right, awesome, thank you. So next question I have for you is, what topics or themes do you actually teach in the classroom, and how do you get about like actually choosing those themes and topics?
Well, some of the themes are determined by the standards, in GSS standards, and I kind of integrate in student interest to the team, so it becomes relevant to them and they can make connections to the topics. And one thing I've recognized over the years with working with the Field Museum is that they have content and themes that students really find interesting because they can connect to their community, and most of the things that field museums have been able to bring to the schools are things that students can really relate with in their community. Like when we talk about diversity, you know, biodiversity, we talk about advocacy in the environment, talk about climate change, investigation. Students see that they can connect with it, they can relate to it, you know, it makes sense to them. Right. So when I structure my lessons or when I plan my lessons, I make sure that it connects to the interests of the students, it is relevant, it's standard based, and it integrates something about their community, you know, and integrates advocacy, you know, social justice. How can we make change within where we live? Change that become positive to us, change that involves the environment, change that is something that in the future will benefit from. So generally, it involves a lot of the students' interest, standard based, and relevance to the community, and how can students connect with it?
I think that's pretty awesome. Yeah, I think what's really important about science now is that we try to find that connection to community and the connection to culture. And so more and more that these students see themselves as being scientists. Just naturally, kids are interested in science. They're observant, just naturally. And I think especially high school is that pivotal age where people are expecting you to know what you want to do. And you're like 16, 17, 18 years old. And it's like, what do you expect me to know? At this
yes,
age? Like,
yes, but you'll be surprised that when you engage them, they bring in something that they are not so sure they want to be in the future. But with science, when they start to engage with, the activities, engaging with their community, you see that it's relevant to their day-to-day life, and is culturally responsive to the way they think, the way, they are bringing to the classroom. Yeah. It's like getting interested. You know what? This is something I can do. I can see myself working in this science. Science is not so difficult, because if I can go out there and be able to clean my environment, and it's still science because I'm, picking up garbage and making sure that the plants and animals that reside in that environment can survive. That's science, so they can put themselves in that setting.
Right.
And it's very important for, for the students that we teach, that generally they are curious, like you said, they want to know things.
Yeah.
So they have questions. The question may not be the question that we want to ask.
Yeah.
As teachers, to engage them with, but questions that they think is important to them, that they feel is relevant to them. And when those questions, they can find answer to those questions, then we can really engage them in science.
Right.
Because they are doing it themselves. They're discovering the answers for themselves.
Yeah.
And you're telling them, teaching them all these big concepts that really, they're like, how does this is not important to me.
Yeah,
it's not important to me. It is important, but they need to see the relevance of it. How is it important to them?
Right. I think that's awesome that you're getting your students involved in that hands-on science and helping to, I won't say help them to see that way, because some of them already walk into the classroom seeing it. It's just that the opportunity is now being like, oh, okay, I can do this right here in the classroom setting. I may have already seen it, but the opportunity is there. So also just kind of engaging them and helping them to see more than what they have already seen. I think that's a great thing for a teacher to do. I appreciate you doing that. I think another question I have for you, since you're talking about that, what are some of the most powerful lessons that your students have taught you? It seems like you have an admiration for your students. So what are some things that they taught you?
I would say that it's the most important lesson that I've, over my number of years I've been teaching, that I've actually learned from students, is that you can always learn from them. You don't, as a teacher, you don't have all the answers. Like you said, they are curious. They're going to bring things that you yourself have to think about it, like as a teacher, because they're younger. The generation changes. There's an age gap, knowledge gap, technology, everything has changed. So one of the important lessons I've learned for them is that students, they're bringing a lot into the classroom that we as teachers don't really tap into. But if you as a teacher really engage them, get into their brain, see how they think, you learn a lot from them. I've learned a lot from my students. Another thing is that know who is important in their life. That's another way, just being able to connect with your students. When you connect with them, especially the students that we teach, as a teacher, generally just connecting to your teacher, to your students goes a long way. What is important to them? Oh, how are you? How many sisters do you have?
Right.
Or is your mom a teacher? Things like that. Oh, what do you like as your hobby? Oh, I played, instruments. I've been able to find out that once you get to know your students, build that relationship, know who is important to them, what do they value in their lives, then it's very, very, you're able to engage them, because you have a relationship with them, So because they're walking, hey, Daniel, how is your pet?
Yeah.
Or, and then how is Christy doing? Did you, things like that. They enjoy talking about the things that are important to them. Right. And it's just like we adults too. We like people to know who is important in our life, what we like doing. So that way I've been able to engage them. I've learned that, you know, it matters a lot. When I can ask you, how are you today? Did you play your game? Could it be your Xbox game yesterday? Did you play? Your mom, you know, is she okay now? Is your cousin fine? Right. Or has your pet, things like that. So they really value that a lot.
Right.
And because of that, I've been able to build really strong relationship with my students. So, you know, we talk about things like that, especially during the remote learning, you know, it's kinds of, this is their thought. It helps them to relax. Oh, how are you? Can I see your dog? You know, they raise it up a little bit, like, look at it. Oh, you know, so it sets a nice setting for the class, and you're able to really engage their thoughts, their thinking. You know, it's very important. Right. Very, very important. I found that to be the most important thing, just knowing who is important in their life, what their interests are, you know, what they love doing. It goes a long way.
I have another question in for you. So what is your background? What really like got you into wanting to be a science teacher?
I'm from Nigeria, originally from Nigeria. So I've been teaching with the Chicago School for a number of years.
Yeah.
When I came initially, I wanted to go into the field of nursing. I wanted to become a nurse. Yeah, I wanted to become a nurse. And then I had an experience at the Cook County. I keep calling Cook County, the Soldier Hospital downtown. I mean, I was new, so I didn't. I went to the hospital, and then I observed that the patients that were just sitting at the emergency room was African American, from Hispanic, everybody. But then I looked at the doctors. I'm just coming from Nigeria. I don't know what I don't. You know.
Right.
That was just my first experience with being in America, and I looked at all the doctors, medical personnel, you know, from the different race, Caucasian, you know, and I just thought to myself, I said, there's a disparity here.
Yeah.
Because, and then I saw a lady that was struggling to actually convey what she was going through, you know, a Hispanic lady. She couldn't speak English. Nobody could speak Spanish. And this lady was there trying to tell the medical personnel what was wrong with her. So I said, you know, and that really impacted me. This was over 20-something years. And I said, you know what? I think there's a need for people of color in the field of medicine.
Yeah. People
that can actually communicate with them, know where you're coming from, can relate to them, can know their cultural perspective, and, you know, empathize with them. That was the most profound experience I had, because I was just coming, and that was just the first experience I had coming to the country. So I decided, you know what, I don't want to become a nurse again. That won't impact a lot of people. I would just probably treat 1 or 2 or 3 people.
Yeah.
But when I say teacher, I'll be able to impact more students. And I'm happy to say, I've impacted a lot of students in the field of science. I mean, my first experience, I was in Vegas, and I saw one of my students, I taught at Crane High School on the west side. That was my first school. So I was able to make connection to UIC. I took students to UIC. They were able to go. You know, when I made sure I connected with the people, the professor at UIC, and they were willing to have that connection with the school at that time. And so my students were able to go there, went to the cancer lab. So I've been able to see students go into the field of medicine. And then the most rewarding part of it is to see your students come back. I was in Vegas, and I saw this girl screaming my name, like, Miss E. I was Miss E. Miss E, Miss E. And I looked back, I said, my name Henry Campbell. Remember how you used to encourage me? How you used to take me to US? I'm now a pharmacist.
Yeah.
But yes. West side of Chicago, Crane High School. This was 15 years back. The kids couldn't stay in school. It was a rough neighborhood. But we had smart students, intelligent students that could become anything they wanted to be. All they needed was just the support, the right teachers, the right connection, the right partnership with schools. We were able to make it. So that's one experience I will never forget. So that is why I decided, you know, shifted from going into into healthcare, and decided I was just going to stay teaching. And I'm still teaching. I'm still supporting my students, be it the field of medicine, environmental issues. I'm still there supporting them because we need more people that looks like them in that field, in the field in healthcare, any field in medicine that can connect to them, can relate to them, that, you know, that can find the relevance. We have areas, we have testing a cure for sickle cell. We know it's a genetic disorder, predominant among African Americans. I'm sure if we have Black scientists in the field of research, there will be some remedy, there will be a way to find a cure for sickle cell, because it will be uppermost in their heart. You know, if you don't suffer something, then you don't see any need for a remedy for it. So that is, I will never forget that experience.
That is a, thank you for sharing that story. That's a cool, that is, that's a cool.
Yes, I still remember me in Vegas and this girl screaming my name loud. You know, but I'm so happy that, you know, there's hope.
Yeah.
Definitely. And when there's hope, there's always going to be a change. You know, where, so I hope so, because cures for sickle cell disease, it's not only going to impact America, the US, or the African Americans. It's going to look at the whole of Africa.
Yeah, it's everybody.
100%.
Yeah.
So you have this issue of sickle cell. So we need to see more people. We need to get our young ones interested in the field of science. That, you know what, you are sowing something back into your generations to come. If you are able to find a cure for this, you have cousins. We have cousins. I talk to my students. Most of them say, "Oh, we want to talk about sickle cell because that's a relevant issue." They just open up to you. Say, "Oh, Mr. Alabi, I know that. Is that what it's called? Sickle cell? I have a cousin. I have someone that's my sister." Or I've had a student that say, "You know what, Mr. Alabi, that's why I'm sick and I'm not here every day. I have sickle cell."
Yeah. Right.
For that student, it was an eye opener to just talk about things that were important to her. You know, and tell her this is how you can cope with it right now, but hopefully we pray someday there will be a cure for sickle cell disease where we can have genomes, whatever genetic engineer, whichever genetic biotechnology, we'll be able to modify these things so that people like you will be okay. So relevant topics like that, you know, we talked about relevancy earlier on. That is something that our students need to know about themselves, that this is something that is prevalent within our culture. Right now, we are coping with it. There are ways that we can cope with it, but in the future, we're going to find a cure for it. And it's people like them that can do it.
Right.
No, that's all.
Well, thank you.
Talk too much?
No, you didn't. Thank you. I wanted to ask you, was there any questions that you have for me?
Okay, so so tell me a little bit about the name of the...
the Armor series?
Armor series, yes. I wrote it somewhere, not looking for it. Tell me about it, because it's the first time I've been hearing about it. Is it done every year, and how can students be involved? Do you have students' involvement?
Yeah. So the Armor series, it is actually done once a month, I believe. I have a coworker, and a Jelzik, who helps to put it together. And we paused it because of COVID. Usually the series is in person and people come to the Field Museum and present. So we paused it because of COVID. But we had an idea to bring it back for Black History Month to talk to teachers, people in the field, grad students, other scientists that are doing things that people need to know about. Really just that simple. They're out there impacting the public and the community, and people need to know they exist. So this is actually the first time, from what I know, that we've done it virtually.
No, I never knew anything about it.
Yeah, it's the Field Museum has been doing it for a while now. I have to check back on you how long, but the Field Museum has been doing it for a while, and have managed to get some really good scientists of all different backgrounds and cultures from all over the world, to come to the museum and talk about their studies and their lessons and what they've learned throughout the years and what projects they're doing and trying to implement. And I think this is the first time we've really tried to have a section of it really focus on teachers right here.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So
thank you for thinking about teachers, thinking about the community, thinking about, you know, people within the community that are contributing. I mean, just doing their own bit, especially with teachers. We are supposed to be conveyors of knowledge, but at the same time, we get knowledge from our students. I do a lot. I wanted to ask you a question. Are you involving people within the community? Because I can recommend somebody that I know. She's not a teacher. Yeah. She about the program called Girls for Science.
I have heard of that program. I once did
Jackie Lomax.
Huh?
Her name is Jackie Lomax.
I haven't heard of the name. But I've heard of the program.
Very good.
I have done some community work. And I'm always up. If you're willing to pass along the information, I'm always up to check out and see who it is I can talk to or who is willing to talk about the work they do and just how like the Field Museum and the art department, Color Science Action Center can help what's going on in the community. So I'm up for that.
I will send you, Jackie, and because that's another program that I volunteer with. Actually, the program Girls for Science has been in existence for I want to say my 12 years.
Yeah,
so I became involved
with Girls for Science.
Yes, I've become involved with them. I started doing the science activity. The goal for Girls for Science was to kind of the same thing, but instead of focusing only on them, we focus on females.
Yeah.
Minority females. We know minority females, African American, Hispanic, we are minority towards as a female scientist and as a female too. So Girls for Science is doing they're doing an awesome job. I will send Jackie.
Yeah, please do.
Please, she'll be somebody that you really want to jump on, even for future connections, because she is involved with a lot of things. Baxter, a lot of other companies are in this now because it has grown so big. So I will connect you to Jackie. I think both of you can probably do great things.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
I want to just tell you thank you for joining. I really appreciate you spending your time with me today and spreading your knowledge and what it is that your students have taught you. I'm super excited for everybody else to hear what it is you have to say. So I just want to tell you thank you.
Thank you very much. So very, very much. Are you a scientist too?
Thank you. I am a senior partnership coordinator.
Okay.
I went to school for anthropology and Spanish, so pretty much learning how to communicate.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You too, anthropology and Spanish.
Right. No, you. It's not me, it's you.
Thanks, so let me keep you. Thank you, take care.
Thank you. You have a good one.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Bobo. I am a CPS teacher at Mount Vernon Elementary School. I teach 3rd and 4th grade math and science. And I have been teaching for about 15 years now. And yeah.
All right, so I think that's pretty cool. So you've already told us what you teach and where you teach. If you don't mind me asking, so what are the cultural aspects of your school? What are the demographics of your school?
Let's see, Mount Vernon is about 97% African American and maybe the last 3% may be Hispanic.
Okay, all right. And you say you teach math. And what got you into that? So how do you make that relevant for your students?
Ironically, my major was in reading and social studies. But once I got into the classroom, my principal noticed that I was really strong in teaching those foundational skills to 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. So she wanted to kind of keep me in that pod. So she turned me into the 3rd and 4th grade math teacher. So I teach both grades, math and science and social studies.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
And they have a reading teacher as well.
Yeah. So I'm just curious. I could be wrong, but I can see math being maybe a one street thing, but with science and with social studies / history, how do you make those topics feel a little more relevant to your students, like their culture and their background?
Well, I try to use a cross-curriculum format when I'm teaching social studies and math and science. I try to embed everything in there. And how did I mix the cultural aspects, you said?
Yeah, do you put in some cultural aspects so they can feel like, oh, I see myself in this or something like that?
Well, being that I am myself an African American lady, I tend to find myself using a lot of examples of myself within the lesson. And being that my upbringing is also on the south side of Chicago where I teach, I noticed that I kind of include a lot of my history into my teaching.
Right, right. I think that's actually a really great thing. I feel when it comes to science, social studies, whatnot, and math is a big one too. Being able to see that representation and that person being willing to talk about their background while also, I've noticed just when I was a kid going through those classes, that was really important for me. And now, obviously, I ask you that even as an adult, but even as a kid, that was important for me. I'm like, well, why are you doing this as a teacher? Like, why, like, what is it about this that grabs you where you feel like you can relate it to your own personal self? And once I kind of realized that, it made it easier for me to be engaged, to be interested. If my teacher came with them background stories and all that.
Yes, and I even pull in their family and, you know, the background history of their family, because it's ironically, it's very similar to mine.
Yeah, right, right. I have another one here, and you told me how you make these, you know, relevant to your students. But when you reflect on your career teaching, you said 15 years?
15 years.
When you reflect on your career, what are some of the powerful lessons that your students have taught you?
Wow. When it comes to history, or when it comes to just anything altogether?
Whatever it is that you want to explain. So if you want to just dive in on history, or if you want to go subject by subject.
I can go through it all. One thing that I can say now that my students taught me was to be more open-minded to other things that are on the outside world. And as far as the things that they're interested in, and to dive into their interests and put some of their feelings and their ideas and their topics that they want to study, to, you know, have a variety of things to study instead of just focusing on one. That's one thing I learned from my students. And by me doing that, I was able to grasp their attention and keep them engaged, because I'm talking and teaching things that are interesting to them. Right. And I'm not just speaking strictly with what I feel and what I want to teach. Right. I'm over the years, I've learned to be more open-minded to the topics, the subjects, everything that I'm teaching. And giving them a chance to include themselves into the lesson.
Yeah. I think that helps when you look at that a lot of times in multicultural communities, that, if you can bring in your family and you can talk to them about things outside the classroom, that they start just seeing themselves in it. Good example, I think I've noticed when I would do field trips is the kids talk about Minecraft all the time, like all the time. And, you know, and they're like, oh, I know this plant because of that game. Oh yeah, I play this game a lot, but I know that animal over there because of this game. And I'm like, okay. So like,
being mindful to the students that have different cultures and backgrounds.
Right.
Like, for example, I have a student maybe 2 years ago who's from Mali, Africa. And we were doing Christmas around the world. She said, well, I want to share what we do for Christmas. So I allowed her to take over the entire lesson. Wow. And be almost like the presenter, or she did the entire presentation with the class, of course, but we all ended up studying her culture.
Right.
And it made her feel proud. It made her feel a part of the team. She wanted to put on the entire outfit and even get on the stage and show the school, like, this is where I'm from and this is how we study Christmas. And I could tell that it made her feel as if she was a part of our little family that we had in the classroom. And she felt like she was able to give some type of input.
Yeah. That, you know what? Yeah. I think you were taught. Students are like forever able to keep you updated. And I think the more we pay attention to them and their comments and their suggestions and their feedback and their observations, it does nothing but make not just the curriculum better, but it makes like the person that's teaching that curriculum not feel like a student, but feel like they've learned something themselves.
And learned something through that experience.
Yeah, that is a cool. What grade was that at the time? Do you remember?
She was in 4th grade.
Yeah. Yeah, she had something to say.
Yes.
Something to say. So I have one more main question for you, if you don't mind answering this question. what is your background? What is it that, you know, like got you into this? And was there anybody that inspired you throughout the way?
As far as becoming a teacher?
Yeah, teacher or just an individual?
So I will say I have two. Number one, it would be my, I had a teacher when I was in about 3rd or 4th grade. I was raised by by my dad, so by a gentleman. So a lot of the female things I had to learn from my teachers. And I had one particular teacher that stood out where and I'm sure she probably could have gotten fired for this now that I'm thinking about it, but she noticed in me that I needed something.
Yeah.
And what she did for me was, even though it was small things, like she took me out to dinner. I'd never been out to dinner before. She bought me my first purse. You know, she took me to the mall. She did girly things with me that she did not have to do.
Yeah.
And a part of that made me feel like she saw something in me that I needed something to keep me engaged in school. And she took initiative to do that, even though it was beyond her requirements as a teacher.
Right.
And I still remember her. I cannot forget her. I know she's a much older lady now, but I can never forget that one moment. So I always wanted to be that teacher that showed my students the love and the care, just in case they're not getting it at home or they're missing out on that one little piece of it. I always try to make sure I pay attention, and I wanted to be that person to give more or to give that love to someone else.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And another, I became a teacher because it's what I always wanted to do.
Okay.
I can't remember from the time I was little teaching my little bears, and it's what I've always wanted to do. And I thank God that I was able to stick to this path and do my dream job.
Right. Well, shout out to that teacher and for you going through everything and actually still doing something that you wanted to do as a kid. I feel like a lot of people that gets pushed back or lost along the way.
I actually love my job. I actually went into the career that I wanted to become.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people, you know, don't say that. Some of them like, I want to be a doctor. I want to be this or that. They end up, you know, being something else because that's what was working for them at that moment. I think I'm able to do the job that I've always wanted to do. And so I actually enjoy coming to work. I actually still love teaching.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good for you. Good for you. Because it's benefiting all of us. I know that for a fact. Good for you.
I agree.
I do want to ask you though, we're getting towards the end and I really appreciate you spending your time with me. Are there any questions that you have for me?
What made you become interested in environmental study? And I actually enjoy it, I will say, when we go out into the field and how it connects with everything in this city, as far as being in this city, because I've been out to places that I didn't even know that we had this type of life in the city of Chicago. I remember one field trip I took, because I've been with Mighty Acorns years ago when I first started teaching. I was at a school that had Mighty Acorns come to the school, and they took us out to the field over there in River Oaks. And I actually saw deers or bucks, they're called, fighting. And then I stayed with the team, and when we went back that following season, I saw their bones. Like one of them died from that fight, probably. His bones was out there.
Yeah.
So I would have never experienced that without you guys bringing this wildlife that we have in the city to my attention. I would have never wandered through those woods. I would have never been interested in going hiking. None of that. So I appreciate being a part of this as well.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate that. To answer your question, it was really my upbringing. We moved around a lot. It was a military family. And so I got interested into the landscape and nature from going from obviously one state to the next state to the next state. And then on top of that, my interactions with my grandmother. She was from the South. She moved up north to Chicago and had a garden in the backyard. She was growing everything.
Me too.
She had the touch. Grandma had the touch. And I remember just being excited to go over her house because I wanted to eat. Like I wanted to eat what she grew, you know? And I was like, I don't know.
Tomatoes.
Yeah, right. Like
that's what I'm putting in my garden. As soon as I buy a house, I'm having me some tomatoes, fried green tomatoes.
Yep. She was the only person I knew in the city growing grapes on the fence.
Oh,
you know? And so I was like, I want some grapes. I want some grapes. So it was actually those two experiences that got me into the major I went into. It was anthropology. So pretty much a study of people, the study of culture, the study of humans. And that just kind of led to, once I got my first main job working at a forest preserve, that just kind of led to like, wait a minute, I already know these plants. Like, and I didn't realize that I'd already had that experience from grandma's garden. I didn't realize that. I was like, this plant looked like that plant. I know that plant. That's a daily. My grandma got lots. I know a black-eyed Susan. She got that in the yard. Like, I know what that is. And so because I already had that foundation and I didn't realize it, it was easy for me to get into the field. And it started just in the backyard. It was really just that simple. I want to go ahead and tell you thank you very much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. And as you already know, if there's any ways in the future that we can work together, me, my employer, Field Museum, and my department is all open ears, and we really appreciate everything that you've done to make us better as a department, because that is the honest truth. Thank you, Chicago Public School teachers. Your work is greatly appreciated. And to further support Black History Month, check out the Field Museum's website. Thank you for tuning in to the A. Watson Armour Seminar Series.